It feels like things have gotten just a step too far. The Denver Nuggets are being similarly dismissed as the top of the Western Conference favorites, and it's all right. Maybe you got the OKC Thunder coming out because they got Isaiah Hartenstein, a fully healthy roster of OKC. Looks like the cream de la cream of the West. But the Nuggets, maybe the fourth best odds to win the West. And then Michael Malone, people don't think he's a top 10 coach in the NBA. Y'all, we got a lot to get into here at Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. I hope you're having a spectacular day today. I hope that your weekend was great. I know you got a chance to spend some time with Adam and Matt the other day. And look, you know, this has been a very interesting offseason. There's been a lot of stuff surrounding the Denver Nuggets. They draft Deron Holmes going down with Achilles injury. KCP looks like he wants to resign to Denver. He doesn't. Resigns with Orlando. There's speculation on if he got offered a 3-year deal that even looked like the $22 million a year deal that he got with the Orlando Magic. We see Jamal Murray go off at times in the NBA playoffs, have a very mid-playoff relative to expectation, goes to the Olympics, doesn't get it done. Jamal Murray looks like he's going to sign a contract, and then he doesn't sign it, and then he finally signs it as of last week. And then Joker dominate throughout the Olympics, looks like the best player in the world. He's basically keeping Team USA at bay the entire time he's on the court. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of talk about the Nuggets this year, and I think that where we are currently standing, I think the Nuggets are absolutely underrated. And the reason being is that people are making a very big deal of KCP leaving, and I think that's legitimate. I was watching KCP just last night, watching some of his defensive highlights, watching his offensive highlights, the things he does well in space. You know, especially y'all, I don't know if y'all remember that Dallas Mavericks game last year that Kyrie Irving had that left-handed floater from mid-range over Nikola Jokic to win the game. But remember, KCP was dynamite in that fourth quarter. He had a couple of pull-up mid-range shots that helped to keep them in the game. And then before Jamal Murray got that opportunity to hit that three to put them up 3 right before Luka Doncic gets a 3 because Aaron Gordon goes underneath the screen, KCP had some really big shots that he hit. And then also his defense was terrific. You know, if you go back and watch that first round series, especially LeBron James is putting him in the post and he's giving LeBron James problems. LeBron James is trying to drive by him. He's not giving up space. Now, he might be smaller than LeBron, but he's a very aggressive, tenacious defender. So it makes sense. It makes sense why people are down on that loss. But I think what they're missing in the grand scheme of the Nuggets is that their core four was always going to be Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. That's the foursome. That's what makes them elite. Like, that's what puts them over the top. It's the role players for sure. They're the ones that help to lower put their ceiling in a higher place. They're the ones that help them to be able to make those changes around the perimeter, especially with having Bruce Brown, having KCP, having Christian Brown, having Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther. Those are the players that are like around the edges that help them to excel. But where we are currently is that people are just kind of looking at the Nuggets core four and they're starting 5, and they're just basically saying, look, we just don't think it's good enough. We don't think that team is good enough because we saw what happened in the NBA playoffs, and because they lost in the second round, we do not believe that they have the horses to get the job done. And I think that is the overreaction. I think it's the fact that if you look on FanDuel.com, shout out FanDuel, in the Western Conference, OKC, they're a plus 320 favorite to win the West. Following them is the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 450. And then following them is the Dallas Mavericks at plus 500. And then the Denver Nuggets tied at plus 500. I just think that people have moved the goalpost a little too far for the Nuggets. I think that there's a narrative that exists about them, and Michael Malone, who we'll get to a little bit later, that I just think that people are just a little too hung up on the fact that Jamal Murray was injured. And that was a contributing factor, if not the biggest contributing factor in why they lost. Because if you don't have your second best player, who's an elite shot maker, a good playmaker, and he's the one that's able to take the pressure off of Joker for him to be able to do what he does at Joker, but Jamal has to do his job and to be the guard finisher, similar to Kobe Bryant and others that have played with elite level bigs. He wasn't able to do his job because of the injury, and that, I think, actually is what changed the team. Now, they did make shots, the others, in the second half of Game 7, and I think that's definitely a part of it for sure. And I think this is also a big deal right here. Big Honey said KCP is going to be missed, but I don't think CB is off in terms of defensive impact. I think that's the question right there. I also agree with that. The issue is CB spot-up shooting, but CB's more athletic and a slasher, I think better slasher than KCP is. Now, that's the thing CB's going to have to get, man. He's not a good mid-range shooter, and he doesn't have, like, the playmaking chops. I mean, any playmaking chops relative that you would want him to have in that spot. And you also want him to be a decent enough ball handler to be able to bring the ball up the court if need be. That way they can get pressure, focus off of Jamal Murray, who can do more off-ball work. I think if Christian Braun is able to take a good leap in his processing, ball handling, and his passing, that's going to make the world of a difference for the kind of impact he's going to have on the team. But because the Nuggets are so good, they were going to win those minutes anyway when he's out there with the starters. But it's just going to be about, for Christian, does he trust his athletic ability? Does he trust what he's seeing in front of him? Does he trust the scheme? And does he trust what his teammates are doing around him enough to be able to consistently provide real value? Now, I think he will, especially defensively. And the thing that makes CB such a tantalizing defensive prospect, because if you have a 6'6" athletic guard who has that much strength, that much athleticism and verticality especially, it just creates so many issues for you defensively. Now, will he be able to get around screens as good as KCP? No, we're going to have to see. I mean, that's going to be a tall task. KCP is one of the best screen navigators in the sport. But Christian's going to have to be able to step into that. Peyton Watson's going to have to step into that. Peyton Watson's going to have to play a little bit of guard this year at times. He's going to have to be able to make sure that he's hitting those shots, open shots especially, hitting those mid-range shots. There are several things that he's going to need to do. But again, that's all still like, that's the fifth starter or the sixth man. Russell Westbrook and Julian Strawther, I think, are going to be a nice addition scoring-wise for the Denver Nuggets this upcoming season. So, you know, they're going to have to make sure they're implementing them, allowing for their skill sets to flourish, you know, putting Russ next to shooters, getting bigs out of the way and away from the rim as much as possible. So they're going to have to do that stuff. But on the other side of this, though, look, I think Julian, man, is going to be able to take his game to the next level. One, if he's healthy. Two, I think he's going to have the shot volume with that second unit, especially when he's playing with Russ, because they're just going to need that kind of a player that can put up buckets and put up threes. And I think if they can find a way to get Russ, Peyton, Julian, and CB to be able to buy into their roles, which we've already seen two of them do, but also then be able to take their game to the next level by providing efficiency and providing smart, high IQ plays. There are little things here and there that they're going to be able to do. And I think for the Nuggets, you know, I'm really excited to see Christian Braun use as another big screen setter at the guard spot. I think he's going to offer a lot of value there, especially from the 2-5 pick and roll they're going to have access to. But ultimately, I just think the Nuggets are being underrated. And I think that we're kind of back to this place where it's like, okay, Jokic is the best in the world, but we just don't think that you have enough. And again, if you have legitimate concerns, which I also do, then that's one thing. But I think the narrative that, you know, some analysts are saying they're guaranteed not going to finish top 3 in the Western Conference. Guaranteed they're going to maybe win 46 games next year. Again, health dependent. This team is going to have like a lot of dogs on it, and they're going to have an opportunity to do something really special this year. Can't wait to watch it. But on the other side, we're going to talk about who are the biggest threats in the Western Conference, and why are those matchups in particular going to be something that the Denver Nuggets have to prepare for as they get ready for this upcoming season? And there's a lot that we got to talk to about that. We're going to talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets. Y'all, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Y'all, again, everybody knows I love concerts. I love going to comedy shows. I love finding the best deal possible for live events. Like right now, there are super deals and that you can get with Gametime, and there's going to a lot of great experiences that you can get using Gametime. Again, when you buy a ticket, you can see it directly from the seat that you're going to be buying from, and you can look out from the venue to your target and whatever it is you're looking at, wherever you might be seated, and you get an idea of what it's going to look like. And you also get a lot of great prices and stuff as well. So y'all, make sure you download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. We'll be right back for more here on Locked On Nuggets. Y'all, we are back here for Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Y'all, if you're on the YouTube side, make sure you give us a like, share, and subscribe. We're on the way to 10,000 subscribers by the end of next season. I'm hoping let's do it together. Y'all, if you're listening to this on the audio side, make sure you give us a 5-star review. That way more and more people can listen to the great stuff being done here at Locked On Nuggets. So, y'all, let's get to it. Who are the biggest threats to the Denver Nuggets this upcoming season? Well, y'all, number one at the top of my list is the OKC Thunder. I think OKC has such a well-built team. They have a bunch of smart players that just know what they're doing. They have a bunch of players that I think are confident and they're committed to trying to learn how to play basketball the right way. And then on top of that, they're led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is one of my favorite players in the league, one of the best players in the league. I would argue top 4, top 5, depending on where you want to put Embiid or Luka or one of them. But they're a great team. And their starting lineup this next year, it looks like it's going to be something around the lines of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Hartenstein. And then off the bench, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, and then again, Chet at the backup 5. They're going to have J-Dub also at that backup spot, 5 spot, with Kenrich Williams and Aaron Wiggins. So they got a roster. They have 5, 6, 7, 8. I would say 9 players on that team that I truly believe can get real playoff time and be valuable players. They're a loaded roster. If you compare that with the Nuggets, you got your 5 starters, and then you're going to get into the air. Like, do we do Russ? You know what I mean? Are we doing Julian Strawther? Are we doing Peyton Watson? They're just players that I think people have more questions about by nature of the fact that they just didn't win this last year. And I think that's what it's mostly being connected to. I think that if you just look at the overall personnel for the Nuggets, you're like, man, like they're actually really good and they're elite. But a lot of that just depends on, hey, we believe in Joker, but we can't necessarily say we believe in the rest of the roster. But I think OKC deserves to be the number one threat out of the West to the Denver Nuggets. I think Shai is one of those players that can just rise to the occasion and hit huge shots and get stops at the right time as well. I think that another team that the Nuggets are going to have to be conscious of, and I'll say it easy, since they just lost last year, but the Minnesota Timberwolves, let's say they continue to get better. You're going to have an opportunity to kind of see how you're going to line up again this next year in the regular season with all their bigs. There's just going to be a lot of stuff. And I think that if you're saying that Minnesota is fully healthy, then it makes sense why they're not only going to be second favorite, but they could be the first biggest threat to the Denver Nuggets because of their rebounding and their interior defense and all the defenders they have on the roster. Third, Dallas Mavericks. Now, I don't love the Dallas Mavericks. Like, I think they're really good. But at the end of the day, Dallas got Luka. They got Kyrie. They got Derek Lively. And they just got a host of another set of dudes that just will make life as hard as possible because of their shot making. And I think Luka and Kyrie are two of the very best at what they do. The only thing that I know for sure is going to be a downside for them, even though they got Wofford and, Derek Lively, they're just not going to be able to keep the Nuggets out of the paint consistently. So I think that's going to be the challenge they're going to have because they don't have the defenders either to be able to bother the Nuggets consistently. And again, that's more so saying relative to like OKC with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet. Like they obviously do. But I think Gafford's a good defender. I think Lively is a good defender. But I think if you're asking me, is that team going to be a bona fide threat to Denver in the same way? Well, no. I don't think that. But I do think that they're going to provide a lot of unique things that Denver is used to seeing, but in different variations of what the coverages and such are supposed to look like. So it's going to be very interesting. I don't know if y'all remember this, but if y'all remember in like December 2023, I think the Mavericks beat the Nuggets. And remember, they used to double Joker on every possession, and that was the Jason Kidd era. They used to double Joker on every single possession in Dallas, and that's the kind of stuff that I think can actually be something that gives them fits. They're just going to have to figure out, make sure they're moving off ball, they're not leaving shooters wide open, like all that stuff. So it definitely is going to cause them to think. But defensively, man, like Klay Thompson, Kyrie, Luka, it's not that I'm saying that that's easy, but you just don't have a single one of those defenders that you're scared of. So, but if I'm ranking them, I still think they're 3 because I think their offensive potency is just going to be out of this world. Out of this world. But the Nuggets are going to be able to counter that, I think, with very smart interior scoring, mid-range scoring. But the three-pointer, that's the thing that has to change because they don't have a lot of shooters. The volume of the shooters for the Nuggets has to go up. So, that's going to continue, over the next month or so. Because that's what's going to have to be the conversation is like, how do we make sure that the Nuggets are building that into their game plan, they're coaching that into their game plan when they get to training camp, how to get up more three-pointers, how to make sure that they're creating an offense that doesn't allow for them to zero in on different points to shut your water off. Because that's what the Mavs are going to try to do. That's what the Thunder are going to try to do. That's what the Wolves are going to try to do. So can you build it within your offense to make sure you're protecting your interior by supplying enough three-pointers and enough outside jumpers that you're converting at a high enough rate? But I would also want to shout out, I think the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be good. I think Zach Edey with Ja, with JJJ, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, G.D. Jackson's going to be getting, surgery and all that other stuff. He's not going to be available. But I do think that's another team that's going to have like a lot of firepower. Defensively, they're going to be a nightmare, especially with Edey and JJJ in the game. And then on the other end of this, I think that Ja Morant coming back, having something to prove, being in this situation now where it's like everybody's not really expecting them to do much. And on top of that, like he kind of missed a year of basketball because of personal decisions and shoulder injuries and all that. I think Ja Morant's going to come out on a mission and he's going to be ready to go. And so the Nuggets are going to have to be ready for that. The Clippers are going to have to be ready for, Dallas and the Timberwolves and the Thunder. Everybody's going to have to be ready for that for sure. But I think the toughest one is still, like I said, going to be the Thunder. Now, we'll see if their shot making will translate. Because I know that's something they ran into this last year. So, we'll see if that's going to be like the thing that puts them over the top where it makes them like, undisputed. But right now, I think a lot of people are just kind of overlooking the fact that the Nuggets have this core four. They have the best player in the world, but KCP's loss it's just such a big difference for them, but not realizing that Christian Brown, Russell Westbrook, Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, those players are all going to be stepping into those wing positions to be able to help and to be assist in some really valuable ways. So I'm really excited to see how the season goes and when it gets started. But in the last segment, y'all, Michael Malone was ranked by CBS Sports in terms of where he ranks among coaches the other day. You might be surprised where you hear he's ranked. It's a very interesting conversation. We're going to talk about all that and more here at Locked On Nuggets. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Just visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Y'all, be right back for more here at Locked On Nuggets. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the final segment of Locked On Nuggets. This is your host, Swiper. This is your team every day. Y'all, shout out to the Denver Nuggets. Shout out to Michael Malone. Michael Malone, apparently, word on the street from Michael Malone is he is not a top 10 coach in the NBA. So CBS Sports puts this article out where they ranked all of the head coaches in the NBA, and you never would have guessed where they put Michael Malone. And again, just to be clear, one ranking isn't emblematic of everybody's ranking, but one ranking in particular stood out to me like crazy. So Michael Malone wins a championship just a year and some change ago. He outcoaches everybody on the way to an NBA Finals. Includes coaches that were up for Coach of the Year. And then we get in a situation now. CBS Sports ranks him. And the reason why they put him at 15th, they say he's the 15th best coach in the league. The reason why, they say evaluating Malone is especially difficult because, well, Jokic. Malone deserves far more credit than he gets for empowering Jokic. Not a lot of coaches would turn their offense over to a second-year 41st, it says 42nd, 41st overall pick playing center. Malone did. But what happened after is much more about Jokic than anything coach could have done. Did nobody crass? Did anybody coach Mozart? Would we care if somebody had? He's one of a kind. Now, I just want to stop there. They juxtapose Nikola Jokic to Mozart. They say the reason why, they start off their paragraph by saying the reason why they don't have Michael Malone higher is because he's coaching Mozart. That takes away from his greatness. All right, continue. Would we care if someone had in terms of coaching Mozart? He's one of a kind, and succeeding with him is instinctual. Coaching plays a role, but ultimately, the two-man game between him and Jamal Murray, or the alley-oop telepathy that he shares with Aaron Gordon, is about the chemistry he's developed with them through trial and error. This is not a case of Steve Kerr and Stephen Curry when a coach arrived and devised a system that allowed a once-in-a-lifetime player to be his best self where previous coaches had failed. Jokic would be Jokic anywhere. He's literally never played with an all-star, and judging Malone outside of Jokic is almost impossible. We do know he's devised defenses that have tended to outperform their talent, especially lately. We also know that he's a very old-school coach that struggles to trust young players, which is causing some friction with his front office at the moment. For now, we'll say he's a good coach and the right one for a Denver team that has achieved more success with him than it ever did without. But given the Jokic factor, it feels unfair to put him near the top of such a crowded list. All right, y'all, I'm not going to lie. That is a bunch of malarkey. So Michael Malone loses credit for coaching Jokic. Phil Jackson gets credit for coaching Michael Jordan. Tyrue gets credit for coaching LeBron James. Like, what are we doing? Red Auerbach gets credit for coaching Bill Russell. What are we doing? I guess the thing on Malone is, so you're saying because he's an all-time great player that he gets penalized for that. But I'm trying to understand. Mike Budenholzer won Coach of the Year with Giannis. Okay. That didn't make sense. So Joel Embiid and Nick Nurse this last year, is that just Nick Nurse? I mean, Joel Embiid? How's that work? You know, when you see great players in the league, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Mark Daigneault, does that make sense? Like, you absolutely always want to attribute the player's success to the player first and foremost because they have to put in the work. They have to show up. They have to be the one to do the job. They have to be the one to be willing to sacrifice their body, their mind, their livelihood, their families, and all those things to be able to do stuff like this. But to think that you're not going to credit a coach for turning a horrific defender early in his career in Jokic to when they got to 2018-19, they were a top 10 defense for most of the year. And then last year, for half the season, they were basically a top 7 to 6 defense in the sport. He is the one that devised the plan for Jokic to play up at the level, to be able to wall off backside. He's also the one that helped the Nuggets to put that whole hedge and catch and recover situation in place defensively. He's also the reason why Jokic and Murray and all of them, like, they've all benefited from the fact that Malone has set up a true two-man game system. And he even talked about this in the press conference, flanking them with shooters in the corner and then giving them a rim runner that's next to the rim. He has helped to develop all that stuff. And he's also been a part of implementing the culture for why they win so much. That just doesn't make sense to me how you get discredited for coaching an all-time great player. Because that's just the way it is. And if anything, it's more impressive that Joker has won a title. The team won a title with only one All-Star. So how does that figure? How do you win a championship with just one All-Star? How do you be at the top of the Western Conference multiple years with just one All-Star? That just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is it that happened with Coach Malone that made people be so low? And I think it just has to go to the playoffs. I think that they lost in the second round. I think that they lost in Game 7. They got blown out in Game 6. I think all that stuff had to do with it. And I think the fact that people just don't watch Denver like that and they don't respect the Denver market like that is why people kind of have this passivity to Denver. You know, Jokic first won his MVP. He's the worst MVP since Dave Cowens. Terrible MVP. And then all of a sudden, you know, he wants to do whatever. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I wish there was a real criteria we could put in place because Malone's also never finished higher than 3, I want to say, in Coach of the Year voting. Despite the fact he's won more Western Conference games than anybody over the last 6 years, there's just a disconnect between, okay, it's all Jokic, but then it's like Malone has to make the right decision in personnel groupings, and they got to figure out the non-Jokic minutes and all that stuff, which, again, is a part of the conversation. They do need to figure that out. But, I mean, I just think Malone has been incredible for what the Nuggets have asked him to do and for what they had previous to him, when they only really had truly Doug Moe and, I mean, George Karl. I mean, they just haven't had, like, elite coaches. And I think that Michael Malone has just been able to build such a good culture and a chemistry with the organization where they can get through that stuff and they can figure out how to play the young guys. They can figure out how to build in some veterans in the roster and all that. They can figure all that stuff out. And that's all going to help to accentuate all the great things that Malone already does. And it's just, you know, I think it's just one of those things, man. Like, Jokic is just viewed as a supercomputer, and because he doesn't necessarily, like, follow people, you know, screaming up and down the sidelines all the time, and he's not like, you know, but the thing is, he's also a loud press conference person too. Like, he talks, he explains the game. If you ask him a basketball question, he'll answer. So I don't really know what the thing is with Malone that, like, keeps him from getting more public love because he's such a public figure. He's probably the loudest personality the Denver Nuggets have. But for some reason, there's just a disconnect in where he ranks among his peers. Y'all, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Nuggets. I hope you continue to have a spectacular day. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think the Nuggets should be rated higher in the Western Conference? Do you think that Coach Malone is going to be a top 3 player or top 3 coach at some point again this year? Let me know what y'all think. This is your boy Swiper. I'll see y'all on the other side.